Okay, so forget oil for a second. The great power struggle of the next decade, well, it's not going to be fought over what fuels our cars. It's going to be fought over what fuels our entire digital and industrial future. We are talking, of course, about nuclear energy. And in this new great game, a surprising dynasty is very quietly taking control.
So what does this new world order even look like? Well, it's not being built on dusty oil fields. It's being built in these super high-tech industrial facilities. So the real question becomes who's building them and, more importantly, who controls them.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our story really kicks off with this pivotal moment in early 2026. There was a single political victory in Europe, and it was championed by France. Now, this didn't just tweak a few regulations. No. It laid the foundation for an entire continent's energy dominance.
This right here, this was French President Macron's masterstroke. The concept itself is actually pretty simple. If the main goal is to cut carbon, then any tool that cuts carbon, whether it's wind, solar, or nuclear, should be treated exactly the same. Now that sounds totally straightforward, right? But its consequences for the nuclear industry were, and I mean this, absolutely revolutionary.
And here's exactly how that little policy tweak becomes real power. By getting rid of what investors call political risk, this principle sent a crystal-clear signal to the entire global market. And that signal was, nuclear energy in Europe is no longer a gamble. It's now a state-backed cornerstone of the EU's industrial strategy. And just like that, it opened the floodgates for all this low-interest green funding that before was only for renewables.
And the result? Well, you can see it right here. A guaranteed, locked-in demand shock. I mean, look at the baseline, and then just see that massive jump from this new EU policy alone. Now factor in the absolutely enormous amount of energy we're going to need for things like data centers and advanced manufacturing, and boom, that demand curve just goes vertical.
Okay, but that brings us to the big, critical question. This huge new demand requires a massive amount of uranium. But here's the catch. Europe mines almost none of its own. So how on earth can it possibly be winning this race? Because the answer to that question reveals Europe's real power. You see, it isn't found in a mine deep in the ground, it's forged in a factory. The continent's truly unbeatable advantage lies in its absolute dominance over the critical midstream of the nuclear fuel cycle.
This right here is the heart of the whole argument. Think of it like this. Anybody with enough money can buy raw ingredients, right? That's the uranium ore. But Europe owns the world's most advanced kitchen, these super specialized plants that convert and enrich that ore into usable fuel. The US, on the other hand, has plenty of cash and a ton of reactors that are hungry for fuel, but it has to pay someone else to cook for it. And if you want to see what that vulnerability looks like in a picture, well, here you go. As of 2026, America produces less than 1% of the uranium it consumes. Less than 1%. It's almost entirely dependent on other nations, not just for the raw material, but for the crucial processing services to turn it into fuel.
There's a quote that just nails this power dynamic perfectly. The US has the reactors, but Europe has the cycle. In a supply cliff, the US will likely have to pay a processing tax to Europe. And that's it, right there. When supply gets tight, the one who controls the processing infrastructure, the cycle, is the one who calls the shots.
Okay, so having the industrial might is one thing. But how does that really translate into a concrete strategic victory over its biggest competitor, the United States? Especially when you know the US is spending billions and billions to try and catch up.
And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the part that reveals the strategic endgame. Because it turns out the US isn't just acknowledging its dependency, it's actively funding Europe's dominance with its own taxpayer money.
The proof? It's a landmark agreement that was announced back in early 2026. It's called Project Ike. It's a huge deal between the U.S. Department of Energy and a foreign, state-owned nuclear giant, all designed to solve America's fuel crisis. So, who is this foreign power? It's France. And the United States is paying the French state-owned company Orano $900 million. And get this, it's not to buy fuel, no. It's to subsidize the construction of a French-owned and operated enrichment plant on American soil.
I mean, this is nothing short of a strategic masterclass. You see, the US isn't just buying a temporary solution. It is literally funding its own permanent dependency. America pays to de-risk Orano's global expansion, it becomes totally reliant on French technology, and all the while, Orano uses this deal to also expand its plants back home in France, cementing its #1 position in the world.
So what this all boils down to are two fundamentally different worldviews.
The US, with all its fragmented private companies, is acting like a dynamic debtor, just trying to spend its way out of a deep structural crisis. But Europe, with its state-integrated champions, has built an integrated fortress that isn't designed for quarterly profits, but for long-term sovereign survival and, most importantly, control.
So the final verdict here is, well, it's pretty stark. The US is footing the bill, Europe is cashing the check. The US is borrowing the technology, Europe owns it. And at the end of the day, the US is just a consumer, desperate for fuel, while Europe has made itself the indispensable gatekeeper that controls the entire process.
So what's the key takeaway from all this? Well, while the whole world is focused on the booming demand for nuclear power, the real, lasting power doesn't belong to the biggest consumer. It belongs to the one who controls the supply chain. In this new nuclear age, the United States may be the biggest customer, no doubt, but it's Europe that is quietly building the dynasty.